Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm going to ask my panelists if maybe they could all come on camera now so I can introduce everyone. I want to welcome you. Thank you so much for coming to the town hall this evening to talk about kind of the reopening of the Ruth Acty building and children returning. I have a few people here tonight that are going to help me out. I've got Jackie Murillo, a kindergarten teacher with us, who's going to kind of talk from a teacher perspective. Your volume working?
Yeah, hi, good evening, everyone.
I got Dominica Spears, our PTA co-chair, up in the corner, at my corner at least.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you.
Christine Sarkis, the other PTA co-chair.
Hey, everyone.
And Lisa Rossi, our lovely second grade teacher.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah. So I just want to start before I do the slide presentation. I just wanted to start by saying a few thank yous. First, I just want to recognize that we're here almost at a year, and I just want to say just a massive thank you to the families. I know what a rough year this has been for you, and as educators, it's been so frustrating for us to be so limited in our ability to support you. So I just want to thank you and appreciate everything that you've done to support us and your own children in learning. I'd also really like to appreciate the volunteers that have come in this week. I asked for volunteers before. I was kind of told I couldn't unless they've had a COVID negative test. So, but I do appreciate the work, and I'm hoping that I can ask for some more volunteers if you're willing to get COVID tested. We've got a lot of work to do around the building, but I want to thank you. I also just really want to appreciate the PTA through this year, who has continued to just partner with me and do fundraising and just also just be kind of a voice of how difficult things are for families. And that's been really hard and really helpful in guiding us. And finally, I really want to thank the teachers. I've been pushing a little bit this week. At the same time, they've been working on report cards. I'm like, now we got to get the school cleaned up and clean out your classrooms and make space to fit all the desks and the kids. So I just wanted to acknowledge that that people are really going full bore. So I'm going to launch into my presentation, and let me get you into present mode. And you'll only be able to see me. So I put up our new Ruth Acty sign. If you haven't gotten to see it, it's very exciting. One of the positive things that's happened this year. So a little bit of agenda. We did introductions. We're going to do a little bit of an overview of a school day, a little bit about after school, building and airflow upgrades, health screening and contact tracing, get some teacher view from Ms. Rossi and Ms. Jackie, and then there will be time for your question and answers. Just a little housekeeping, you can use the Q&A. So as things come up for you as we go through the presentation, you can drop it into Q&A, and Christine and Dominica will be helping at the end of this facilitate the Q&A. So I wanted to first talk about, when we talk about what the layers of safety, kind of the 4 prime areas that we're talking about. And this is mask wearing, distancing for children at 4 to 6 feet, stable groups, and hand washing. And we'll be talking a little bit about each of these as I'm going through the presentation. So the first thing that all families will be doing who are coming back into the building in the morning is they will be doing a health screening. This is what the health screening currently looks like. This actually might change. It seems to change every week. And it's just a bit.ly that you will be using. If you forgot, we like you to do it at home. If you forgot, we have these giant Q codes that you can just flash on your phone and it will bring it right up for you. So every student does have to do a screening before they can enter the school grounds. Students will go directly to their classrooms in the morning. We can't be on the playground. So they'll start heading right into their stable groups. Parents and guardians will not be allowed on the campus during this time. And for the first few weeks, for the little ones, we'll definitely have a staff member that will be escorting them to their classroom. For the first few days, even for the older kids, they might not know where their classroom are, remember, and so we'll have a lot of adults to be supporting them. There will be 4 entrances to the building, and each classroom will be assigned their entrance that you will be entering and exiting the school from each day. So that will be to avoid traffic and congestion and maintain distancing while we're getting all of the students into the school. So masks are required for everyone. So here's some examples of acceptable face coverings. The surgical dust cloth and then the clear masks. Unacceptable are the gaiters, bandanas, any of the masks with vents, and the N95 with vents. We had a staff meeting today. We're having a lot of discussions about preparations, and one of the asks is, if your child hasn't been wearing a mask very often during this time, if you could actually start to practice with them, and not just practice with them keeping it on a little longer, but also finding the best mask. We have found that that's been really, really helpful in supporting the students that have been on campus to keeping the mask on longer. So something that fits very well, and when they bounce and run around does not fall below their nose. That would be very, very helpful. So one of the big questions is, what will the size of the class be? And this is really going to depend on how many students we have returning to in-person learning. Based on district projections, right now, we believe the largest class at Ruth Acty is going to be 21 students, but that will depend on how you fill out the enrollment survey by tomorrow at noon. We don't know the real numbers yet. But here is a real Ruth Acty classroom. And so when we talk about 21 students at 6 feet of distance, this is what this looks like. Now the desks are closer, but the chairs must be at that 6 feet. As you can see, this is a sea of desks. One of the big issues that we at Ruth Acty and actually across the district have right now is that these desks are designed for 2 people. And right now only 1 person can use the desk. So we are, and the district is scrambling a little bit to figure this out, and I don't know the answer, but what we're hoping in the long run is that some of these desks would be taken out and a single desk to put in to allow for the students to be able to have just more clear pathways to the sink, to the outdoors, and so we're working on this. This was a test case to see what a 6-foot distance is in the square footage of the classrooms that we have at Ruth Acty to see if it was possible. Some of the improvements in the classroom for air. This is the HEPA air purifier that we have now. We have new filtration systems and airflow. The ionization system that the district installed at Ruth Acty first, which is supposed to kill, is it 94% of COVID and other airborne diseases. And we will be having the windows open. And so it will be crucial for kids to actually bring a jacket because it could be a little bit chilly in the classrooms. So these are some of the directional signs that you're going to start seeing in the classrooms. So of course we have the distancing, and these circles, and actually we need more of them as we're doing more planning, are put at very specific areas to help for lining up. So you will see them at the check-in points at the first part of school. You see them outside of classrooms. You see them outside of the bathroom, and it will help students to know where they're supposed to stand, and also start to train kids about what a 6-foot distance looks like. There is only one child allowed in the bathroom at a time. So the plan would be there's this circle right outside the bathroom. We will have to teach kids to look in the bathroom. If it's empty, they can enter. If it's not, they will have to wait until there is nobody in the restroom. We have directional signage that goes throughout our hallways. So the flow of traffic in the building will all be heading east. So as the kids enter the building, there's certain doors they enter and all traffic flow will head east so that we don't have a lot of kids going by each other in the hallways and disrupting those stable groups. The only time that they will go against those one-way signs is if they are going to the restroom and their restroom is on the other side of the hallway. So as you can imagine, there's some training that we'll have to be doing with students on kind of all of these new practices that we have in the school. Here's a sample picture of the bathroom. Some of the stalls at Ruth Acty will be closed so that only one student at a time will be able to access the bathroom. So a lot of families have been asking about social and emotional learning, and what I want to say is that we in no way plan that the children are going to walk in and they're going to be able to get down and get ready for learning. So next week we will be doing our Wednesday meeting will all be professional development on social emotional learning. And this is the idea of some of the activities that we would want to do with children and the outcomes that we would want to see for children. So for example, facilitating classroom discussions about the event of course being the pandemic, and with a goal that we're trying to increase a child's sense of safety, especially as it relates to school and their time there. Being open to feelings uncertainty and start to build some of the connections that children have lost and that we might need to reconnect. Providing opportunities for children to reconnect socially and physically with the environment. So cultivating more ways for them to be calm. Shifting attention away from kind of the stressful memory and how are we teaching children coping. And this is something that we do a lot in school if something is stressful for a child. So we're improving a child's ability to their sense of control, ability to kind of endure through some of the difficulties. And then presenting facts and providing information about the pandemic and the experience and what it's meant for education. And hopefully having the outcome being that the children are starting to remain hopeful. So this is kind of just a sample of from the PD, and there is some curriculum that has been developed for each of the grade levels that will support teachers with the students' reentry into the school building. So eating at school. So we will be eating outdoors whenever weather permits, which I'm hoping by the time students come back in will be most of the rest of the year. So the cafeteria will be providing both bagged breakfast and lunches, and students will, those will be brought up to the classroom. They will be able to eat the snack during the first morning recess, and they'll be able to eat lunch at the afternoon recess outdoors. So they will all be assigned to a quadrant of the yard for both their morning and lunch recess, and they'll rotate on the weekly basis to stay in their stable cohorts. There are no more drinking fountains being utilized. We have these water stations. We have 2 of them at the school. We're hoping to get more of those. So we are asking children to bring labeled water bottles that they can have for the day. We do have some here, but if you could send children with those. It will be important for kids to really dress warmly because even if it's chilly, we will be eating outdoors. So after school, we will be having a very small after school program. So I was explaining this to people who came yesterday. There will be the Bears program and Jazz, which I was saying we will have to rename, will be on site. there will be 72 children, so that's 6 cohorts of 12 children. But I'm going to caution families that if you have childcare or you have alternative childcare, I would make those arrangements. By comparison, we run a program of 250 students, and so we will only be able to provide services to 72 children. We are looking for guidance from the district right now on how those children would be chosen. The Bears children will be part of the program. Any student who it gets McKinney-Vento services, which is our homeless and foster youth. And so then we are working on what the criteria would be for the rest of the children. But it will be a very limited program. So the general play guidance that we have, and this is I'm going to talk just a little bit about what a stable group means. So at school, the stable group that your child will be a part of is their class. So if you are a 5th grade student in Rick Kleiny's class, that class is your stable group. At school, those are the students that you will go through your day with indoors and at recess and lunch recess. And those groups have to stay stable. They cannot actually interact with other kids or play with other students. The reason for that is that if a child does get sick or there is a case in the class, we need to be able to contact trace and so the more limited that group is, the easier that contact tracing is. So the Department of Public Health and the state, while they're not specifically limiting the amount of stable groups that children can be in, the district is recommending that children only be a part of 2 of those stable groups. So at Ruth Acty, that would be your classroom. And if you were in the after school program, that second stable group would be in the after school. So this is one of the key safety criteria and that we will be maintaining. It's also going to be one of the most challenging. We've been doing it with the children on campus, which has been 3 stable groups, and now we will be doing it with 19. So our scheduling, our master schedule, our scheduling of lunch and recesses, and teaching children how to move through the building are going to be very critical for this component. So this is just similar to what I was saying, is that the outdoor facilities, the quadrants will be used by 1 cohort at a time. The structure can be used by more kids in one day, so after school will be able to use it. But the idea is that whenever children are either exiting their classroom or entering their classroom, they will be hand washing. And so that's part of the critical component of outdoor play. The sports equipment, each cohort is going to have their own equipment that they will be using. The PE equipment, if one class, it goes from the PE class and another class uses it, that PE equipment would have to be cleaned between each one of those stable groups. So health screening and the contact tracing, I already went over the daily health screening. If a child does come to school and becomes sick during the day, that child will automatically be isolated. Our isolation room is actually the small room behind the secretary's desk at Ruth Acty. And then we begin working with if a positive case happens, we begin working with the district nurses. We do the contact tracing. We partner with the city of Berkeley, and the system of notifying families begins to occur. So that's a lot of information, and a lot of it is very technical. So I invited, and I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. I invited Miss Jackie and Miss Lisa to just kind of talk about some of the preparations that have been happening. and also just kind of give their perspective on how they're feeling about what's going on. So should we start with the lower grade? Miss Jackie, you want to get started?
Sure. Hi. Whew. So this is a lot. I will just acknowledge that right now. But I am very excited. Teaching kindergarten when we started it in the fall, thinking about teaching kindergarten online, I just didn't know how that was going to go. Fortunately, through this time, I've been able to connect with families, connect with the kids. We've kind of already have built a class community, even though it's been through distance learning. So it has been, so I feel good about that. Like we know each other. We know each other. We have some routines and procedures on distance learning, but now it's time to go back to school, and it's very overwhelming and exciting at the same time. I always make the joke that it's like online dating or something, and now we get to see each other in person for the first time. So I kind of like that analogy, but I'm really excited. So this week, I just wanted to kind of give you my perspective just through this week. Kindergarten, myself and Miss Siobhan have started a very small cohort of kindergartners that have been invited in for an afternoon intervention. So last week, we've kind of prepared our classrooms to get that eight kids in the classroom. 8 kids is not 18 kids, but it's actually, we had our first, we met them yesterday, and it's actually was great. It was wonderful. My heart was full. I'm just really excited for the kindergartners to come back. They've never been to school before, so this is a big deal, and it is also a big deal for the parents out there who have never had a kindergartner start. So I know that there are going to be feelings of first day of school, jitters, feelings, nervousness, all those things that we really address in September or in the fall. They're going to happen now. So we're kind of, in my head, I'm acknowledging that with the families. As far as the kindergartners go, it's kind of great. They've never been to school before because we get to teach them all these new for us routines and procedures of, there's a lot of things we're not going to have. We're not going to have our carpet, or, we're not going to circle up on the carpets. We're not going to be, lining up to go outside. There's a lot of things we're still trying to figure out how the process is going to go. So my 8 kids that I have right now have really been a good, a little bit of a test run to see how it's going to work. But they've never been to school before, and they are ready to, we just get to teach them. We get to teach them that you have to be 6 feet apart, and we have to, we're one group of us is going to play in the little yard, and all the rules that we're learning right now, the kindergartners are getting that too, but it's going to be like, this is school. So I feel like we have that advantage to start school. It was very cute to see the little kindergartners, like their feet dangling from the chairs, and just to see them in person was just so wonderful. I'm really excited. I'm overwhelmed. But all we've been doing right now is prepping our classrooms, kind of getting it so that we have enough space for the kids, but still making it look happy and colorful. We're going to put a lot of our regular routines and of our morning meeting, and I think they're going to come familiar with the learning in some way, but the procedures are going to be a little different. But they don't know any better. They don't know because they haven't done this before. So I'm looking forward to that. Let me see. What else? What else, Mary? I don't know. I'm just really excited. I wrote a few notes to see if I remember everything. Anyway, there are a lot of unknowns, and we haven't done it this way before, but I know that we're going to get it ready for kids to come in and just have a really positive experience, at the same time keeping their health and safety like top priority. So yeah, if you ever, kindergarten parents out there, that it's your first time, it's exciting. So we can make it a big deal for them and for you.
Thanks, Jackie. Miss Lisa, you want to talk about?
So I will echo what Jackie says. This is all very exciting, but also extremely overwhelming for all of us teachers. The great thing is that one of the things that I love about Ruth Acty is that we all work so well together as teachers. And so we're bouncing ideas off of each other, like, how are you going to deal with this? And what about this? And what about the bathroom? And how are you going to make sure one kid goes at one time, and so on and so forth. And we've got this collective unit of really knowledgeable and really smart teachers. And so not one teacher or not one grade is doing any of this alone. We're all in this together. And a little bit different from kindergarten, you know, when you start getting into second grade, and especially in the upper grades, so much of what normal school looked like was a lot of group work, you know, a lot of like getting heads together and working on projects or working on math problems. And we're not going to be able to do that. Then so what I've been telling my students and my families is, you know, while we're really excited to get back to school, it is not going to be the school that we knew, you know, from this week last year. It is going to be different. So when we come in, it's the same thing. We're coming in the second grade, and all the other teachers in the upper grades, like this is the first week of school. It's the first few weeks. We're going to also have to teach them routines because this is brand new. So it's, you know, they're going to have to learn what they're used to about going down the hallway and going to recess, and walking to the, you know, out to eat lunch is going to look so different than it did before. And so that's going to be a challenge for the kids who have been here before, you know, who've been through school at Ruth Acty. But kids are incredibly resilient, and they're really easy to, they can manipulate, or they can be manipulated into being able to follow these new guidelines. And that's one of the great things about working with kids, is they're so easy to, they're malleable. I shouldn't say manipulate, malleable. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, not manipulate, malleable. Sorry, it's late. I was at school for a long time today. So, you know, we're doing the same things. We're rolling up rugs. If you were a parent in my classroom, the living room is gone, the bean bags are gone, all of that, like, really kind of coziness is gone. However, this is the new cozy. So all the classrooms, all the teachers are really kind of making their spaces comfortable and quaint, and but also a really safe learning environment. And I think looking into what we're going to be working on when we get back into school, to kind of piggyback a little bit, what Mary said, was really kind of balancing that social emotional work along with the academic work. And that will happen. We're also trying to figure out what that's going to look like too. So, you know, that's on top of getting the classroom prepared, thinking about the academics that we need to work on. We're also trying to figure out, you know, how are we going to bring in the social emotional work around COVID, around coming together as a community. And so there's a lot of work to do, but I'm really, like I said, I've always been incredibly impressed with our staff, and we're a collective unit. We really kind of bounce ideas off each other and share ideas. And I'm really looking forward to what it's going to look like. My kids in my class have had a lot of questions about it. So every question they ask over the last few days, I write it down. I don't know, we'll have to look into that, you know, and then I pass that on to other teachers, like, hey, you know, this student asked about this. How are you going to do that? You know, so I think having the collective unit of our staff, our amazing staff, is what's really going to make this like really work for us. And everybody's really excited to get the kids in, even though it's going to look like nothing we have ever done before. So
thank you so
malleable.
Thanks, Lisa. And you and Jackie are going to stick around for Q&A in just a minute, but I just have to go back to screen share, and then we're gonna take questions and answers. Oh, my computer's sometimes when I go out of my presentation mode, you'll have to excuse me for just a moment. It won't let me go back into it. It's all gray.
Mary, while you're doing that, I just wanted to
Yes.
mention it was very cute when I had a couple the kids in yesterday. They said, the calendar looks really small. Like everything looked really small because they're all used to seeing it on their screen really big. So I thought that was really cute.
Um, all right. Sorry, and we're gonna get to Q&A in just one moment. So this is what you as families have been asked to do, and I want to recognize and apologize for the district. I didn't know a survey was going out to everybody about enrollment, and using the word binding when you didn't have enough information was not a good choice of words. So if you do choose to keep your child in distance learning, unfortunately, your child will most likely be assigned to another teacher as the Ruth Acty teachers are coming back to teach live for the most part. We have one teacher that I know of right now that will not be available for in-person teaching, and I have reached out to that family. I do want to just personally recognize how challenging this is for families who are making the very, very difficult decision to stick with distance learning. It is incredibly disruptive for the children and their learning experiences, the relationships with teachers. We did talk today at staff meeting about trying to find that very difficult balance right now between being able to answer questions of children who are coming into the building and have anxiety and want some questions and answers and want to talk about it, with the acknowledgement that in every classroom there's at least one child who is going to be going through into the distance learning route. And so we did have a conversation about that today. And tried to brainstorm about kind of how to find that balance. I don't know a lot about the distance learning assignments, and I want to be honest with that. I won't be in charge of the distance learning teachers. But what I do know is that any child that's going into distance learning is still part of our school and our classroom and community events and anything that we can do to make that transition smoother for families. We will definitely be working on that. So these were some of the questions that came to me that I actually thought would be useful and pertain to a lot of folks. And then we will turn to the Q&A that are in the that you are giving us. So if I have a kid who's typically snotty, sneezy, and sometimes coughs, all due to allergies and or mild asthma, will he be sent home due to exhibiting COVID symptoms? And the answer to that is no. What would be helpful, and it now is if your child does have any allergies or mild asthma or health conditions that they exhibit on a regular basis, it would be helpful for you to get a doctor's note. And then when you're filling out the screener in the morning, you would be answering no because it's not related to COVID. So that would be something you could start working on now. What is the plan for usual behavior issues around safety protocols? We are anticipating that some students will have a behavior around safety protocols, and it could be mild, which means that a child needs just verbal redirection. If children are really having a hard time with that, we might have to come up with a little behavior intervention plan and do reinforcement for the behavior that we're wanting to increase, whether it's keeping the mask above the nose or the 6 feet distancing. So we will be working with our behaviorist and on that if a behaviorist would be warranted for that. How will preps work in these full days? So prep teachers such as science release and and garden and music and PE, we are still working on that, and we need a little bit more information. Those things are still being negotiated with the union right now, and as soon as we get that information, we'll be developing a master schedule. But that schedule and those preps will still have to fall into the stable groups mandate. So whatever we do, it has to be stable groups. And so some things such as the mixed music, for example, with instruments, I know that we will not be able to do that. Even children blowing into instruments in an indoor space is not possible. So some of those things will have to change, and we're still working on what that's going to look like. Where will a sick kid wait to be picked up if they are sick? They will wait in the isolation room behind Miss Celia. And what does it mean if we don't fill out the form by tomorrow at noon? All right, so here's my ask. It means that I have to call you. To be quite honest, I feel for people who are trying to make the decision. At the same time, part of our what is holding us back on our planning is our numbers. We need the information from the district with the finalized contract, and we need to know what families are choosing to do. So we will have to reach out to every family who doesn't fill out the form. So I'll get the first report tomorrow night. So the best, if you could do your best to fill that form out. If you have any other questions that don't get answered, and we'll go into Q&A right now, please email me, and I'm happy to give you information. So at this time, I'm going to, I guess, ask all the panelists to turn on their cameras, and Christine and Dominica are going to help with the Q&A, which I can see is piling up in there. And if Jackie and Lisa could help me answer some questions. Thank you.
We've got a lot of really, really good questions.
Great.
Dominica, you want to go first?
Sure, let me get to the top. And then also, I noticed some people are raising their hand. How do you want to do that? Should we do questions first and then address the people raising their hand?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Why does it keep cycling? Oh, okay. So there's a question about jazz, and will the number of kids expand later in the spring or at least in the fall?
It will not expand in the spring. 72 is going to be our max. I'm really hoping that many things are going to change in the fall, including adding students into that program. As soon as some of the health restrictions open up a little bit, then we should be able to expand.
So you had mentioned the food distribution, so for breakfast and lunch, and is that for all kids? Will it be like universal bag lunch, or is it just for kids signed up for lunch?
It's for any student who wants lunch.
Okay.
But I'm going to caution, and there's no one from Nutrition Services, I hope, in here. I will say that right now, because we're not dishing up from Ruth Acty, it's all prepackaged. The food has been, a lot of the kids are choosing not to eat the food. So I just want to acknowledge that. So the more people that could send with home lunches, the better. But anybody who needs a lunch will be able to get a lunch.
So we know that most of the Ruth Acty teachers are coming back except one. So the question is about the distance learning, and I guess the kind of the structure of the distance learning program, who's in charge of that program, and how will families be able to make that transition if they're going to remain distance learning?
Yeah, so I don't know who's going to be in charge of that. I actually asked that today. So teachers who have applied for accommodations are not able to teach live will be assigned to distance learning. and they will be assigned a grade level. Students who are from Ruth Acty that are in first grade, for example, who might go into distance learning would be stay in the same class. I believe that the schedule will remain the same as it is in distance learning right now, but I'm almost certain that it will, but I don't know very much about the details of the transition, if I'm going to be honest.
So two more, as long as we're talking about families that will remain in distance learning, I just want to add in a couple more.
Yep.
Do we, and this may be another, we'll just have to wait and see, but how will the curriculum transition if a student's teacher changes?
I really, I don't know. It is a wonderful question. I mean, the curriculums that we use in the district are the same. So if we use a story of units in math at Ruth Acty, a story of units is what all teachers do, TCRWP, the fast track phonics, and then some of the computer-based programs. So we're all using something similar. The question will be where somebody is in the curriculum, and that might be a concern.
And one more distance learning that I see just in this sort of grouping. Let's see, we will be opting to stay in distance learning for now. Will this distance learning affect middle school acceptance and assignment?
It should have no impact on that.
Okay, so next question. So are the children supposed to be kept 6 feet apart when they're eating or playing outdoors? And I guess you guys have taken the measures to make sure that that is applicable for that cohort.
Yeah, so I'm going to be really honest. If children are playing outdoors, it is hard to keep playing children 6 feet apart. That is the gold standard. We don't want children touching each other. We do want children's mass up, and we do want children to acknowledge there needs to be distance. It's very hard to keep children outside 6 feet apart. When they are eating, they are 6 feet apart. We actually have been using the rubber dots that Mr. Cohn uses, and you can throw them down, and children are on this place because that's the time when children are pulling their mask down. And so that distance is incredibly important at that time.
So speaking of Mr. Cohn, will the kids have PE, and how will PE be taught?
We are really hoping that, again, I don't know all the details. We are really hoping that Mr. Cohn will be able to teach one PE class for every class. And we have been given permission for Mr. Cohn to teach outside with the different stable groups, as long as he has maintained his distance. So we're really excited that live PE looks like it's going to be an option.
So in speaking of the stable groups, so does the 2 stable groups include sport teams or other kind of things outside of the school groups?
That's going to be a family decision. We are doing a max of 2 stable groups at Ruth Acty. Ideally, I probably would be monitoring to that for my own family, but we wouldn't count it. We're doing our 2 here. But if your child is playing in other groups, I'd be a little concerned about maybe doing the after school program as well.
So talking more about that, there's a bunch of questions sort of around this, but they're all slightly different. Mm-hmm. So if there's a positive case with the class, what's the sort of the current quarantine protocol? And then also, do we need to notify the school if an outside stable group has a positive case?
If your child was part of an outside stable group with a positive case, it would be good to notify us of that. The class would still be considered secondary exposure and wouldn't close, but it would be good to notify us. If a child tests positive in one of our classes, we will do contact tracing. We'll figure out everybody who is considered a close contact of that student, every student and adult in the school, and then that stable group would have to quarantine it was 14 days. It's gone between 10 and 14 days. It was 14 days. I'm not sure if it would be 10 or 14 days.
So in speaking of quarantine, what about siblings? So if siblings are at the school and one cohort is quarantined, how does that affect the siblings cohort?
So the sibling would also have to quarantine. The sibling of the positive case would have to quarantine. But siblings of kids in the class do not have to if they have not tested positive. Those are considered secondary contacts, and they do not need to quarantine. And this gets very, very, very confusing very quickly. I am clear on it. So just for complete transparency, we have had a positive child case on campus with our ed camp. That child was exposed to COVID over winter break, and not related to the campus, but did come onto the campus while he was positive. That cohort, we did contact tracing. We identified 9 students and 2 adults. They did have to quarantine. And then that starts the process of working with the district nurse and the city of Berkeley to identify all cases, and everybody is notified, and very clear, explicit letters are sent out to families about the process.
And what happens to learning during that time? Would class just switch to remote if an entire class was in quarantine?
Yes, if the teacher who also would be quarantined is not sick, then the teacher would actually would revert back to distance learning teacher. If the teacher was sick, we'd probably have to find a substitute for that class.
And so will there be extra disposable mask available to children if they lose their mask or it gets dirty?
We have a lot. We have child size, we have adult size. Yes, we do have extra masks.
Okay, so there's a bunch of questions just sort of about like the responsibility that the community has to one another.
Yep.
So one question that I think encapsulates it, are there requests to the families of each class to practice social distancing outside of school, masking, not socializing indoors with people outside of their families to protect the safety of all students?
We can make a request, and we're working on drafting something that just kind of talks about the current asks of the community as a whole, such as travel goes. But we can make requests, but we cannot do anything about them, even if we know families are breaking those requests, because we are very different than a private school. We are a public school. And so I'm going to say that this question is one that concerns me. I do get concerned about people having judgment and pointing fingers and getting phone calls about the trip that a family took, because we can definitely educate and make requests, but we cannot exclude.
And so this is a question regarding the morning screening. So can one adult use their cell phone or whatever device that they have to fill out multiple forms? So one for each.
Yes, you can.
Okay, let's see. The 6 PE, stable groups, extra masks, positive. Okay, so we're getting through these, but there's still a lot more. Will there be science in person for 5th grade?
I highly doubt it, but I don't know for sure. We have been given permission for adults to break those stable groups. We are concerned about too many adults going into those stable groups. So we are being very cautious about our planning, what that looks like. So that goes for special education teachers, instructional assistants, all of the release teachers. And so it's going to take 20 million hours to figure out this master schedule, but we're trying to identify the best way to provide the best services to students in the safest way. And so some of that is going to be a combination of live instruction where we can do it. And some of it will still mean that a teacher is on the other side of the screen.
So this is regarding the schedule. So will Wednesday remain a short day? And if so, like, does that mean the after school program will begin earlier that day?
Yes and yes.
Also on the topic of time, will you review I know in a recent email, you sort of outlined the staggered arrival and dismissal times. Will you go over that again?
I will, but I'm going to, unfortunately, I don't have any more clarity than when I sent out that FAQ yesterday. We still do not have the official start time. I am predicting that the stagger time will be somewhere between 8:45 and 9:30, and an exit time of 2 o'clock to 2:45. Approximately a 5-hour day, and then this window of getting the kids in on that staggered schedule for safety. And I'm really sorry because you're being asked to fill a survey out and you don't know what time school starts and stops, and that's really hard.
So there's also a question around special education services and speech and counseling. How will that look like for in-person?
So we do have permission for that to be in person. And as long as that's just, if it's one-on-one, or we have students, if we have even 2 or 3 students that are coming out of the same stable group, they could actually be seen by a special educator. So we're working on those plans right now. We are working at 2 of our providers work in offices that, while they have all of the other safety, airflow and HEPA filters, they don't have windows. So we're actually looking at moving those 2 service providers. So again, some of it's going to be live and some of it's going to be distance learning.
There's been a question about, will there be any sort of acrylic barriers or plexiglass, that might be the same thing, between kids' seats?
There won't be between all the kids' seats. So for example, the picture that I showed you, we're not going to put up plexiglass between those. It is possible that we will be using some plexiglass dividers to divide pieces of furniture if 2 kids are sharing the same piece of furniture. But ideally, they've been really clear that kids facing each other, even if there's a clear divider, is not as good as children actually being 6 to 4 feet apart and looking in the same direction.
So this is going back to the music. So will music continue for distance learning? And then it came up again. So just for clarification, if they're doing in-person learning, there is no music class.
Oh, I'm not saying there's not any music class. The music class will not be able to look like it does now. So currently, if your 4th grader it plays the trombone, they're playing or a brass instrument, they're in a brass class with all the other 4th graders, and we can't do that anymore. And so the way that children are doing music, and even quite honestly blowing into instruments, is all very questionable right now. So music is set to continue. I just have no idea what that's going to look like.
So 2 5th grade questions. Will there be a graduation? And if kids choose distance learning, would they get to participate in the graduation?
Students who are participating in distance learning absolutely will be part of the ceremony. And I doubt that the ceremony will be live. Because we still would be needing to do stable groupings at that time, unless something from a health perspective greatly shifted. We wouldn't be able to have 200 people in the cafeteria. And that's very, very sad. But we pulled off a pretty amazing ceremony last year. The kids did an awesome job, and then we had an awesome parade after.
Yeah, as a parent of a student who left Jefferson or Ruth Acty last year, it was It wasn't the same, but it was so special and heartwarming and unique in its own way. And it's something that none of us will ever forget. So it was really, really great.
And so we have a question about the library books. So will they still be delivered if they're being delivered?
Library is a big question right now. So we've even been given the no to the library cart being pushed down the hallway and students coming out because of shared materials. So right now, just our initial thought, and again, we haven't thought through it, is that Rachel will continue to work with classes on learning how to request the books. The upper grades are doing this, and then she can check them out and put them outside the library. But we still have to work on a plan for the younger kiddos.
Mary, I'm not sure if you answered this because I've been reading the questions. So,
Yeah.
But there's two questions. One is about IEPs and another is how will special education services work, like speech and counseling?
Mm-hmm.
And the IEP question is, will they be able to meet with all of their learning resource teachers in person?
Yeah, it is a really hard question to answer. We're hoping that students will be able to receive some of their IEP services live, and some of it will probably remain distance. If a child has 3 service providers, it would be very hard to keep pulling that child out of that class. Just moving them and interacting with that many people would be concerning. So for each child, we'll try to build the best program for them to maximize what we can give each kid.
And so another question came up is, what can we do to help the teachers? So is there anything that parents can do on our end to help and support the teachers right now?
Teachers, do you have any requests for help from parents?
It's hard to say right
good.
now because it's all
I
like
know.
all up in our head. I mean, I think it's nice to know that parents will be willing to come in and can they come in? To help. Okay.
Let me say this. If you are interested in volunteering with a teacher or doing something at the school, and you are willing to get a COVID test, that would be really, really helpful. That's kind of where they've said that people need. That is something actually I haven't stated. Everybody that is on site, staff gets tested every 2 weeks. And we will also be piloting a student testing program next week. And that might possibly be a rollout for student testing as well. So there's going to be more information to come on that. So yeah, if you want to get tested and come and volunteer, we'd love to have you.
And is it volunteers would have to get tested every 2 weeks as well?
They could be tested within a reasonable time frame. Yeah.
And they can only stay with 1 or 2 stable groups?
Oh, I should be clear. I'm talking before kids come on. We cannot have any volunteers on campus once children have come on until they give us really explicit guidelines for that. Yeah, sorry.
Mary, I would also say how parents can help, not so much like physically, but just I would say, have some patience with us. This is very new. Be supportive emotionally, I guess we could say. It's really uncharted waters, and there are a lot of questions, and we don't have all the answers. And I would just, if you want to help, just keep that in mind, and always like assume positive intent from the teachers. We are working our booties off out there right now, and I think the encouragement, like even looking at the chat, people saying like giving teacher support is like very, very meaningful and helpful. So that's one way parents can help support the teachers at Ruth Acty.
Thanks, Jackie.
So another question is, what happens if it rains?
We eat indoors and we distance, and we will have to pull our masks down with all of the air purifiers and windows open.
Mary, what happens if a child wants to return to school, but they've already chosen distance learning? Is there any way to change their mind or no?
My understanding is that I think they're going to hold things tight for a month, and then if there is opening in the class, and when I say opening, I mean physical space in the class that maintains the safety protocols, I'm sure the district would be willing to consider that.
So there's two questions around specifically the numbers. Are 100% of the Ruth Acty teachers vaccinated, or are they willing to be vaccinated?
I don't have that information, and nor is the district allowed to ask teachers based on HIPAA if they've been vaccinated. I can tell you just personally that many are.
Yeah, a lot of us talked about our second shot today.
Yes.
Still hurts.
Mine too. we're all 24 hours post second vaccine.
Okay, so will young children, this is a slightly longer question, but I want to capture the whole thing. Will young children be allowed to play outside freely with one another, or will outside playtime be subject to the 6 feet? You've talked about this a little bit. If so, what is your assessment of the impact of a kindergartner who's being told to stay away from their friends? I know it's a safety protocol, but it makes me nervous to think my 5-year-old will be told to keep away from their friends.
Well, we won't say keep away, I promise. Actually, I don't know, Jackie, do you want to weigh in here?
Sure. Yeah, we definitely wouldn't say keep away from your friends. That is definitely not the language we would use. I think that even just having the small cohort that was in this week, really like designating the space that we were in. Ms. Siobhan has a group also, and so we stayed on the little yard. Ms. Siobhan's group was on like where the little climby rocket and the spikas are. And so we were in our designated spaces. So I think that really is helpful. And I think just in educating the kids and teaching them the procedures of, again, they haven't done this before, so this will be just what you do at school, keeping us together. And I don't know exactly, I haven't thought this through all the way. It's a great question. But I think that we'll be able to, wave hi, like, oh, you can't go, go play with your friend, but look, we can see them. Why don't you give them a big wave? Oh, yay, they waved at you. Okay, just in a kindergarten way. So I would imagine we would do something like that.
And just because we didn't go too into the weeds, but there's all sorts of COVID safety games that we've been playing. So our pool noodles have been cut in half. We use those for our sharks and minnows and our freeze tag because we can't touch each other, but we can teach kids how to gently tap each other with them when they're playing tag. So I will say that I think it's still really joyous out on the yard, even with some of the new protocols.
And I will say, Mary, I know Ms. Siobhan and I were talking about like equipment for kindergarten. That sounds like a lot to integrate, but really, what kindergartners do at recess? They run, they chase each other, they run over to the fence, they just run, and they are so happy doing that. And so, when they're playing, you could just say, oh, remember to keep some space with each other, and that would be a great toolbox lesson to kind of go into. His personal space tool is going to have like a whole new importance when we get back to school. So I think we'll teach that too. So I think it's definitely doable, and it won't be sadder and happy. We'll try to make it as joyous as possible.
So when thinking about materials that children can they bring their own lunch? Can they bring a backpack? Are there any restrictions on what they can bring to campus?
They can bring a backpack, they can bring a lunch, they should bring a jacket, and they shouldn't bring a lot of stuff. Just because space is a little bit more limited, and because our ability to not share materials, the less stuff we have, the better.
And for like math, for example, a lot of us have sent home the math books. And so like those will have to come back, but that stuff will stay in the classroom. So a lot of the supplies that we prepared and got ready for at the beginning of the school year, that stuff will need to come back. But it won't be going back and forth between homes and school.
Yeah, second that for, you know, kindergarten too. I think we sent home a lot of supplies, and they really don't need anything besides, yeah, if they have a lunch or sweatshirt. Yeah, the less they bring, the better, I think, because it would work out best that way.
So I want to acknowledge that we're getting a lot of questions about distance learning, and I know that you don't have answers right now, but will you like there's been requests for like an additional meeting for people going into distance learning, and maybe
I'm going to be really honest. I don't think that would be me that is running that meeting, because I won't be in charge of the teachers who are teaching the distance learning classes. That is going to be another person. But what I can do is definitely my takeaway for what I need to ask the district for would absolutely be a meeting, just so everyone's aware. A lot of elementary principals are doing the same thing tonight at other schools. And I wouldn't be surprised if this ask, which is a completely appropriate ask, it comes out of all of these meetings for there to be a district distance learning meeting.
I'll keep going because that was not quite a question, but
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, do we want to like take questions from the audience though? Because there are some people who still have like hands up. So do we want to?
Sure, there's a couple. I think there's a couple hands. Do you want me to do Luke? Luke, you had your hand up. You can talk now.
Oh, we didn't mean to.
Oh, you didn't mean to. Okay, I'll mute you again. It's good to hear your voice. Paris, did you have a question?
We had ours on accident as well. Sorry.
Oh, okay, no problem. Thank you. Okay, we'll keep going into our Q&A. Glad to hear your voice. All right.
Okay, so somebody's wondering if you'll be posting the slides that you've presented.
I can do that, yes.
And this is being recorded, and we'll post it and send around a link as well.
I do want to warn somebody about the recordings though. So the recording will be posted, but it won't be posted by noon tomorrow because it takes a really long time for this to process. So I just want to say, but I'll definitely send the slides out.
Okay, sorry, there are more questions. I think we're
That's
both
okay.
struggling to keep up a
I'm
little bit.
patient.
Let's see. So what are the chances of kids will keep the same teacher for in-person learning?
They're very, very high, with the exception of the one class that I already reached out to.
And so do we have details about the in-person schedule for children? Like as far as the master schedule, is that complete for all of the cohorts and how they'll be using the space?
Oh, absolutely. We haven't even started working on it because we don't know the start and stop times for school. So we don't have any master schedule done. That's a huge amount of work done is working on that master schedule.
What about the end date for the school year, will that be the same? Is that going to change?
It's June 4th. I would be very surprised if that changed. I will say, and I don't know anything about this, but I know the superintendent has talked about expanded summer opportunities, and he used the word catalog, but I don't know what those expanded summer opportunities are right now.
So the one question about the materials and with them staying at school, does that mean homework will be lessened, or will there be expectations that parents are still supporting or family members are supporting with homework for children who are in person?
I think that's a good question. Lisa, have you thought about homework load yet? That this might be beyond our planning at the moment, but
No, no, we haven't thought about that. I'm assuming that I think for example, when I'm thinking about the supplies that are coming back, I'm thinking about the crayons that we gave, the binder, the writing binder, because that's going to come back. And so I don't know if I can necessarily answer that for the whole staff. I think it will probably be teacher by teacher. Of course, in the upper grades, there's a lot more independent work. So I think, I don't know what that would look like for them. And I'm not even really quite sure what that would look like for second grade. I'm sure there will be some stuff that will be worked out at home. A lot of our time is also going to be spent getting the kids in and out. And so from lunch to recess and all that. So that actual time that we're in class is not all academic or SEL time. It's moving through the systems too. So I'm assuming there might be some of it, but I don't know. I just want to prepare you that there probably will be some of it for some teachers.
we do know that one of the things that we're going to have to work on just is rebuilding kids' stamina. They've been out of school for a really long time, and we're very sensitive to just not overloading students right now. This is a really big change for them. So we're really going to have to monitor kids in classes and how they respond to returning in the work.
What happens if more families choose to return in person than can fit safely into the classroom?
I don't think that is going to happen. And so the gold standard guidance is that we maintain a 6 feet distance. If more children are going to come back, we have permission to maintain a 4-foot distance. If you've exhausted finding a larger space. So we are, from health perspectives, allowed to go to a 4-foot distance so far, and we can do that in the classrooms. But with our capacity, what we're predicting right now, we're predicting we can still do 6 feet. If that happened, it would only happen in a couple classrooms.
And so I know that families are supposed to make the decision on Thursday, but there are a few questions coming up that can people wait until they have all the details for distance learning to make a decision, or like is Thursday the absolute deadline, or will you be giving people information before tomorrow 12 noon more about distance learning?
I don't think I'll have much more information about distance learning. I would, and actually someone would have to email me and ask what the specific questions about distance learning are. I mean, what I am predicting is you'll be assigned to a grade level teacher. You will be using you'll be assigned with kids that might be in the Ruth Acty school from the same grade level, that they would partner them. It would still be the same distance learning schedule. And so you'd have to tell me more specifically about what kind of questions you would have around it. And then I could potentially try to answer those with information I already have, but I would need to know what they were.
So there's more so questions about the extracurricular, like garden, PE, science. Will those still happen? And then, yeah, it's more so of that, and the schedule, I guess, and just the schools coming together. Because do all of the elementary schools across the district have the same schedule for distance learning?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yeah,
yeah.
which is very convenient. And so, yeah, and yes, the enrichments would still continue through into distance learning.
A bunch of people, like, I think it must have been right when you were talking about parent volunteers. A bunch of people asked if parents are if parents are vaccinated, can they volunteer? Does that shift?
It doesn't, because right now, even the staff who have been vaccinated, we still have to get tested every 2 weeks. It still is a continuing practice. I know CDC just came out with some new requirements on vaccinated persons, and I think things will start to change as we move along. But yeah, you still have to get that.
And then there's a question regarding meeting up before class. So will there just be, if for the people in person, they'll be assigned an entryway? Do we know, like, I guess, I mean, we're not recommending that people meet up before class. They still need to follow the social distancing protocol and remain 6 feet, but everyone will be aware of their entryway.
Yeah,
right?
everybody will be aware of their entryway and their entry time, since it'll be staggered times. And then the exit point will be the same point that you entered from when you're picking up your kid.
Speaking of pickup, there's a couple of questions about for families with kids of different ages. If you have a recommendation for dealing with this staggered.
I apologize. I'm going to apologize, because of course my first instinct when we started thinking about the staggered start is, oh, we can take them in, and then I realized we absolutely cannot. So that will unfortunately break we don't have any place to put children and maintain stable groups. So unfortunately, if you have kids at a different age, you're either going to have to wait across the street for the amount of time, or come back. I'm really hoping that we'll be able to. It would not be for more than a 30-minute window, but I don't have any way of solving that, unfortunately, with the stable groups.
And so the best way to follow up regarding like questions that people may have, do you want them to be emailed directly to you, Mary, or do you want it to go through another channel? I know that there was a mailbox for you.
Oh, no, I think I know I'm really dedicated right now to making sure people have their questions answered to be able to fill out those enrollment. So you can email me directly. I've been trying to get to everybody. Hopefully I have. I probably will start responding tomorrow morning again, but you can email me directly.
So we've talked about sort of the stable groups, but how many kids is there a number of kids that can be together at a time, or is it the stability?
So that's the part that's changed and has allowed us to come back to the 5-day model. So just a few months ago, when we were talking about that 14 was the most that you could have in a stable group, that's why we were talking about the group A and group B. Now that's changed. And so now the recommendation is more about distancing in the group, and not about the number of kids in the stable group.
And so there's another question around transportation. So will there be school buses to provide for students who use this service?
Yeah, there'll be limited school buses, because on the buses, they also have to distance, and students will have to have filled out the health screening before they're allowed on the bus.
Will you be letting parents know if another child in the class has a secondary exposure?
I don't know the answer to that. I would have to ask our lovely nurse Julia that I go to everything health related. I don't think so, but I will ask her about that.
There's also a question, will there be a modified version of the talent show?
Only if I can have a parent volunteer who's willing to take it on. And I would love that, because I actually, it would actually have to be, it would still have to be through some sort of distance learning. So we haven't even figured out how we're going to pivot our assemblies, because unfortunately now our lovely assembly crew will be teaching kids who can't all come into the cafeteria yet. So we were actually joking yesterday that it might be Mary and Mr. Curtis up there doing an assembly. You don't want to see that. So we're working on some of those things that we want to do. We're going to really have to think creatively once we've had the kids in the building on how we can do that.
So with the positive case that was at Acty, was there any spread, or was it?
There was no spread.
I can ask another question that's right next to this. If a student has to quarantine, like say because of exposure or travel, oh, you already answered. How will learning work during? What if a student needs to quarantine, but the whole class doesn't? Is there a clear sort of protocol for that?
There was not. And so we actually talked about that exact scenario in my morning meeting, and we were not able to say, so two of the ideas, we don't think that a student could just join a distance learning class, but we did talk about revitalizing some of the work packets that were given out last year. But I also think that we could work with teachers on supporting the learning during that time, so they're staying with the curriculum that folks are doing. I'm gonna, if you guys don't mind, I want to excuse Miss Lisa and Miss Jackie, because I really appreciate their time, but they have to be at work in 12 hours. So if you don't mind, I'm happy to stay on, but I want to say goodbye to Jackie and Lisa and say thank you. I really appreciate it.
Bye.
Hold on, wait,
You're
before you
welcome.
go, don't go yet. 1 second. I just want to read a couple of the appreciations in the form of questions, like, through Mary and all the Ruth Acty staff and teachers know how awesome they are. Our school rocks, and we are so appreciative of the teachers and staff's hard work, dedication, and creativity navigating this challenging time. Hold on, there's a bunch of them. I'm just going to read two. Can we give all the teachers a huge round of applause? They are all such rock stars and have worked so hard to give our kids a great learning experience this year. Nobody has ever done this before, and they have been rocking it. There are more, but that's just
Thank you so much, and I agree. Thank you so much, Jackie and Lisa. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
And we appreciate it, and we also appreciate that we have Mary running things, because without her.
Thank
Most
you.
definitely. I'm going to listen in still. I know there's lots of questions. I'm going to just say
go.
goodbye.
You're welcome to stay. I just want
I'm going to go eat dinner.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.
And eat dinner.
Bye, Lisa. See you later. One other question is, are you requiring the children to have COVID tests before they come to campus?
We are not requiring that. No, we are not. We actually cannot require children to have COVID tests. But we are, the district is looking at student COVID testing, and it will be an option on campus for families and students who will participate in that.
I'm going to ask a question and answer that question, because it's one that I can answer. Any chance the PTA might order a large quantity of recommended masks and sell them to families who want or need them? I don't think we have the bandwidth for that, but I know that maybe it was in the fall or last spring. I don't understand time anymore, but there was a teacher, there was a parent who was making masks. I don't know if that parent is still doing that, but I can sort of, if you're on this call and you're that parent, and you are still making masks, please let us know. Otherwise, I'll reach out and we can send something around in the PTA newsletter.
Christine, can I just understand the question though? Is the question for children who would need masks because they don't have the ability to buy them?
I'll just reread it. Any chance the PTA might order a large quantity of recommended masks and
Oh.
sell them to families who want and
Oh,
need?
gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, but I'll ask a real question. Let's see. I mean, a question that I can't answer. Let's see.
Well, there's the one about the quarantine and the point person.
Yeah.
So if someone has an exposure or positive test over the weekend, is there a point person at the school to report that to?
Me.
If so, you are the point person.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm what's called the COVID liaison. I've been sitting in City of Berkeley meetings every other week all year and learning all about it. And we have wonderful district nurses that the district has partnered with that are really available to us. It's been amazing. And then the City of Berkeley partners with us when we have a positive case as well.
Will the school have to close if a certain number of people test positive?
Yeah, there is an outbreak threshold, which I am not sure what it is right now. But yes, that would happen.
I can ask another. Will students have science, but just with their primary teacher, or will the science teacher be able to teach via projected screen?
No, I'm assuming that Miss Lori will continue to teach science. What I can't answer is if it would be in person or if it would be via screen.
And as far as the staggered pickup and drop off, will TK and Kinder end on the same time? Or is there any idea of like how you are staggering that pickup and drop off time?
Yeah, so whoever goes into the building first will be the ones to leave first. We are predicting that our upper grades will actually go first because we can get them into the building faster. So then they would leave faster. So we'll make the day the same amount of time for all the students.
Can kids who want to bike to school park their bikes on campus?
That's a very good question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. I would imagine that we would be able to figure something out. They would not be able to go to the bike racks that are in the side near the TK class because that's where kids will be going in. But I think if there's not too many bike riders, we would be able to make it work on the side of the newer building. So we would figure that out. If whoever said that, if you are interested in your kids riding a bike, can you just drop me an email so I'll know how many there are, and I can work on figuring that out.
Similar transportation question. Who would families who, I'm assuming this is a bus question, but who do we need to talk to about transportation?
So transportation put out a request not too long ago for the phase 1. I'm assuming they're going to be putting it out for the return to school. I'm hoping that will be in my Friday news, maybe this Friday. You can also always call transportation, whose number I used to know by heart, but because it's been so long since I've called them, I'm actually forgetting it. And see if but I will definitely look into that. I will put I'll put some sort of information about transportation in Friday news.
And so there's another like request, like can you set up a Google document or something so that families can see each other's questions and answers? It may be better for you so that you don't have to keep answering the same question multiple times, but also help with transparency. So is it a possibility to do that?
don't know. So I actually don't know if I have time to do that right now, to be quite honest, because I've had 2 meetings and answered a lot of emails. It's a really great idea. And if I had thought about it 48 hours ago, I would have done it, but I won't be able to go through and answer everybody's question again. I have to be really honest. I've gotten some emails with about 16 questions. And instead of, I didn't have time to respond to those emails. I said, could you please call me? And those families called me directly. And so I just want to encourage right now, because we're coming to that the form has to be supposedly filled out in 16 hours. If you have specific questions, if you can email me, but there's no way I would have time to sit down and start answering all these questions right now. I'm sorry.
Somebody needs, including me, but also this person, needs a reminder on what the Wednesday hours were, in normal times, so we can.
So we get out an hour earlier. So depending on whatever the schedule is that the district finally gives us, a Wednesday will be 1 hour earlier.
Are you seeing any other questions that we haven't addressed, Christine? Because most of them, I think either we don't have answers to right now, or she's already answered them in some shape, way, or form.
Yeah, I think that most of them fall in that category. And there's some more appreciations, and someone has a name proposal for former Jazz, which is RAD, Ruth Acty After School Department.
Ooh, I like it. I had gone to the really boring Raz, but I liked that. That's nice. I'm writing it down.
Okay, oh, let's see.
I think Carissa would like that.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, and in this, I think you've already answered it, but if the caseload goes up in Berkeley in general, will that impact the school remaining open?
It will not. Once we've opened under a tier that allowed us to open, we can remain open as long as we're following all of the safety protocols.
Okay, I think, yeah, there's still a lot of questions, but I think as far as I can see, they're mostly repeats or things we can't answer.
Okay.
So Mary, if do you want to just repeat your email?
Yes. So if you have a question that wasn't answered, please email me. It's my name, Mary Kasdan @berkeley.net. And I will start answering those tomorrow morning. And I am going to ask you if you could try to submit the enrollment form if you feel like you have the information now. If you could try to submit that and meet that noon deadline, it will save myself and my team a lot of work that we could be spending actually really starting to prepare. And so, but again, that's why I really want to open myself up to be able to answer any questions I have. I do have some takeaways. I really hear the folks that are choosing distance learning. I'm really, really hearing you right now. I just want you to know that there's still questions, and having a district meeting on what distance learning is going to look like for the kids is really important. And so when I get off this, I will draft that and say that is a huge ask. And an important information for families to have. And I just want to say I said this yesterday when I met with people, the teacher's first response when the idea that children were going to go into a distance learning class wasn't theirs, is there's just like, wait, can't I just keep them in here somehow? So for the staff, losing any of our kids and it is really, really heart-wrenching. So we really do want to do our best job at supporting the kids in that. And there's been emails floating around today about how to support kids in that. So I appreciate the position you're in right now.
And there's somebody, the person who wrote about donor choose, I'll just forward that to Mary so that she can pass that along to people as appropriate. So thank you for that tip.
All right. I really want to thank all of you. We started out there, I think there was 175. We still have 100 on, the 100 who hung in there. I just want to say, I'm really excited. It's a crazy busy time and doing things that we've never done before, but there's also a lot of excitement with that we're gonna see kids and have kids in the building. So thank you, and thank you for sharing your children with us always. It's just so much appreciated. Thank you, Jackie and Dominica and Christine and Luke and Paris. You ended up joining our panelists somehow. Somehow you got pulled up onto our panelists. So thank you too. All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you.